When you are working with a non-English speaker, it's apparent the easiest way to build vocabulary is through activities with new words. But what exactly does this look like? In this video, I will be sharing with you different ideas of how you can teach both basic English vocabulary and content vocabulary to your beginner students. Here's a quick breakdown of using vocabulary in the classroom. It can be used with whole group, small group, and during independent activities. The reality is all students need to work on vocabulary development, so these ideas can apply for your whole class. The prep time will range from minimum to a fair amount depending on which activity you are implementing. A focus on explicitly taught vocabulary is great for guided reading lessons, but can be a support in all 4 domains. Before we move on to the strategies, one important question to begin with is how do you choose which vocabulary words to teach? Here's a breakdown of the 3 tiers of vocabulary to help you have a clearer idea of what to look for. Tier 1 focuses on words that are usually picked up through everyday conversation. For newcomers, Tier 1 words are important to focus on at the beginning, but realize as they grow in English, they will grow quickly in knowing Tier 1 words. Tier 2 words are academic words that appear across all types of disciplines. Words such as compare, prediction, and establish are just a few examples. You can find lists of appropriate grade level Tier 2 words, which is a great resource to refer to. Tier 3 words are domain-specific words that are connected to content. These words would be the content-based vocabulary words that you would focus on during a unit and are important to understanding the content. So, to answer our question about what to choose, you have to decide on the context in which you are teaching to figure out which words to focus on with your ELLs. Now I want to share with you some interactive activities you can do to support student vocabulary development in your classroom. The first activity is to have students build their own student dictionary. Giving students the tools needed, such as their own dictionary, will help them go back to words they have learned and apply them in a new context. It would be helpful to have the words include a picture for stronger support. You can have the dictionary set up by subjects or in ABC order. Either one works really well for beginner students to add to. It's also helpful to have a few classroom picture dictionaries for your students to have as a resource. Another way you can focus on vocabulary with your students is through games. Games like bingo and memory are great to play when you are working on basic English vocabulary with newcomers. The concept is basic enough for the students to catch on to and are easily engaged. These types of games are great as well because you can easily differentiate from just saying the word to saying the word in definition to saying the word and using it in a sentence. The more the students become familiar with the vocabulary, the more you can push them to produce sentences. Grouping and categorizing words is another activity you can do. Building connections is key to new vocabulary words sticking, and a great way to do that is through opportunities for students to explore and group words on their own. You could do this by giving the students words or pictures with the words and letting them come up with their own way of putting those words in groups. For an even greater challenge, you can give the students a topic and then have them brainstorm a list of vocabulary that supports that topic on their own before grouping them. I also love seeing the different groups my students were able to come up with when I stepped back and let their minds think. Word walls are another great way to support your ELL students. In all honesty, I had a word wall that took up a lot of space and I rarely added words to it. But now there are so many great ideas on ways to create portable word walls. One idea is doing something as simple as having library pockets under each letter of the alphabet and then adding a note card with the new vocabulary word to the pocket after you introduce it to the class. I love this idea because then your students can grab the word they are working on from the pocket and take it back to their desk. One last idea for increasing vocabulary development is to create activities where the students are given some information, but need to use context and background knowledge to figure out the rest. A game like headbands would be a great way for students to practice vocabulary and speaking. You can make your own version of this game by using flashcards or note cards with a vocabulary word on it and tape it to each student's back. Then the students have to walk around and ask their peers questions to try to guess what their word is. Here are some tips and tricks for supporting vocabulary development with your students. First, have the vocabulary pre-selected when possible. When you are explicitly teaching Tier 2 or Tier 3 words, it is important to know exactly what words you are going to focus on and what supports you will put in place to make sure they are meaningful. If you do not plan ahead, chances are you will miss out on important vocabulary to touch on. Number 2, research shows students need to see a word more than once to move it to a long-term memory. So be prepared with a few different ways the students will interact with the vocabulary during the lesson. Number 3, think about how you can touch on other grammar and comprehension skills through vocabulary, such as multiple meaning words, prefixes, suffixes, and context clues. Remember that vocabulary is much deeper than memorization, but an opportunity to help students investigate language and develop skills in doing so. I know that this was a lot of information, but before you get overwhelmed, start here. Take a lesson you are working on and pull out some of the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 words you need to focus on. The more familiar you become with targeting all tiers of vocabulary words, the easier time you will have planning lessons that will support your ELLs.